We're grateful to the delegation of the United States for the opportunity to have an open debate and to discuss honestly the very complex topic of the use of toxic substances in the context of the Syrian conflict. Unfortunately, interest in these events is clearly an ideological thrust. It's closely interwoven with the anti-Damascus campaign, which hasn't yet reached the place it deserves on the landfill of history. When the political process in Astana and in Geneva starts to really take shape and gain speed, then strangely all kinds of incidents start to occur. The last example is the tragedy in Han Sheikhoun. According to our information, the Syrian opposition has requested that the OPCW, or rather the Syrian government has requested the OPCW to send a mission to investigate these events and also to provide assistance. There's no need to repeat that the Russian Federation has always had a clear and unequivocal position. The use of chemical weapons by anyone is absolutely unacceptable under any circumstances. Those guilty of these kinds of crimes must be held accountable. Now let's look at the origin of this problem. The turning point in the use of toxic chemicals in Syria, and then following that, weaponized chemical agents, that turning point was the establishment by the previous U.S. administration of the so-called red lines. Crossing those red lines was supposed to lead to military intervention in the Syrian conflict. That decision served as a starting point for future provocations by terrorist and extremist structures with the use of chemical weapons. They sought to discredit the official Damascus regime and to create a pretext for the use of military force against a sovereign state. Back then, our Western partners preferred to remain silent, including regarding the request that came from Damascus in March of 2013 about investigating the use of sarin by insurgents in a suburb of Aleppo, Han al-Assad. We hope that this kind of attitude will not be repeated this time. It was this inaction that encouraged the insurgents who felt their impunity, and they committed a more significant action in the 21st of August of 2013 in eastern Ghouta when they used sarin. And by the way, quite coincidentally, that attack was timed to coincide in the first visit of the expert group led by Professor Sellström. Now, Damascus showed sufficient good faith at the time, and through the efforts of Russia and the United States and the international community, it was possible to achieve a successful chemical demilitarization of Syria. Now, when it became clear that the government of Assad, in very complex conditions and in very brief time frames, was able to eliminate their chemical arsenals, what we saw was reports about the so-called use in Syria of chlorine as chemical weapons. Now, a fact-finding mission was established by the OPCW with the support of the government of Damascus, which was meant to react to these kinds of incidents. But in fact, this mission never visited the sites where chlorine was used to verify this. And so a poor foundation was laid in the work of the fact-finding mission and then of the joint investigative mechanism on the investigating cases of use of chemical weapons in Syria. In fact, reports fabricated by the Syrian opposition and NGOs supporting it about alleged use of chlorine by government forces, these reports were taken at face value, and no one sought to conduct an objective investigation. If anyone has any doubts that the images of the so-called use of Sarmin were staged in advance. It's enough to look at the videos of that were filmed by certain NGOs, such as White Helmets, which were praised by everyone in this room. And in these videos, you see the same actors that are so-called correspondents. And so these white helmets seem to be closely linked to the terrorist organizations. Or maybe those who fabricated these materials were the same that were exaggerating about the humanitarian catastrophe in eastern Aleppo while they were busy filling their warehouses with medication and food. They were getting ready. They were getting ready for a long-term siege. Can you believe the degree of cynicism? Those are the organizations who provide video materials for this, and these video materials should serve as a basis for us to draw conclusions. The experts of the OPCW have confirmed that these kinds of terrorist groups, such as Islamic State and Al-Nusra, produce fully fledged weaponized chemical substances, mustard gas and sarin, which are regularly used in Syria and Iraq. And by the way, these kinds of the Western intelligence community also agrees with these kinds of conclusions. We have often argued our position in the Security Council regarding preliminary outcome of investigations in the framework of the JIM. Much needs to be examined. This is why we agreed to extend the mandate of the JIM for another year. You need to conduct a thorough, depoliticized investigation of cases of the use of chemical weapons based on reliable and verified facts. The future work of the JIM needs to be expanded geographically. Its mandate needs to be filled with a real anti-terrorist content, which is provided for by a resolution of the Security Council. And we should not be we have good relations with Iraq and other states of the region. People believe us, people rely on us, and what we're doing is to support Baghdad, and so you shouldn't, and the government of Iraq, and you should not try to sow the seeds of discord between the Russian Federation and Iraq. We are very concerned about the fact that certain states are already manipulating the preliminary results of the work of the JIM. An example of this kind of irresponsible approach was putting up to a vote on the 28th of February of a resolution under Chapter 7 of the Charter, even while the Astana process was working very well. So you created an absolutely artificial provocation on that day without even trying to understand what was the purpose of putting this resolution up to a vote. The problem of chemical terrorism remains, and if 2 years ago, if the Russian and Chinese initiative was taken seriously, including draft resolution that we wanted to submit, today the situation would be radically different, but you disregarded this initiative. Now, in responding to the question of the United Kingdom, whether Russia has a plan, yes, we have more than one plan. The first plan is to combat terrorism. The second plan, regarding your resolution, at this stage, we don't see a particular need to adopt a resolution. Earlier decisions adopted are more than sufficient to conduct a thorough investigation of the incident. But if some of the members of the Security Council think that a new resolution is desirable or necessary, then it needs to have a completely different form and shape. In the preambular, it should be stated that the Security Council heard with deep regret about reports of the use of chemical weapons in Han She-hun. And in the preambular, it should be stated that this dictates the need to have a comprehensive investigation in order to find out what happened and who is responsible. Now, the operative part of that paragraph of that resolution, in the initial part of the operative part, should condemn the use of chemical weapons by anyone. The operative part should actually, that was the preliminary, the preamble. The operative part should have one paragraph, and that is for the fact-finding mission to conduct thoroughly the reports. However, on a very important condition that the staff of the investigative mission should be introduced to the Security Council and should reflect geographical balance. There should also be a demand to armed groups and illegal armed groups that control the area where the incident took place to provide full and unimpeded and safe access to the area where the incident took place and to provide all necessary information. The main task now is to have an objective inquiry into what happened. Up to now, all falsified reports about this incident have come from the earlier mentioned White Helmets or the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights based in London. These two sources have been discredited long ago, and to take at face value their reports and base important decisions on them is not professional and not serious. At the same time, we note the contradictory character of the reports about the incident. The White Helmets are getting all mixed up in their reports. Their versions keep changing. They speak of bombings, either from helicopters or aircraft. They state, first of all, they mention the use of chlorine or sarin. They are changing figures about the number of victims, and in the video and photo materials that have been released in the social media, we see representatives of White Helmets taking these photos or videos, and they're acting very unprofessionally. Also, the fact that the behavior of these of the representatives of White Helmets in extreme circumstances, their behavior is very relaxed, which brings one to question the plausibility of these materials. All this clearly has a provocative character, is meant to provoke, and all this unfortunately has been reflected in the resolution. In paragraph 2, the preamble part, for example, expresses the horror of what happened, as though this was an established fact. Paragraph 3 of the operative part states that we need to establish whether this event took place. I mean, have you even checked? Have you even checked what you wrote? In other words, this draft was prepared in a hasty way and not thoroughly at all. So to adopt a text like that would not be very serious for the Security Council. Now, as for the alleged incident that has taken place on territory that has been controlled since 2014 by terrorists from al-Nusra, well, it's true that from 11:30 to 12:30 local time on the 4th of April, the Syrian aviation conducted an airstrike in the eastern edge of Han She-hun on a large warehouse of ammunition and military equipment. On the territory of that warehouse, there was a facility to produce ammunition with the use of toxic weapons. That ammunition was supposed to be used in Iraq and in Aleppo. Their use was confirmed last year by Russian military experts. The symptoms of those affected in Han She-hun were the same as those by people who were affected last year in Aleppo. when all of the information regarding the use of those chemical substances was collected and forwarded to the OPCW, where they continue to be examined. What is clear to us is that chemical terrorism is increasing, and it needs to be countered as decisively as possible. Unfortunately, all our attempts over the past 3 years to get the Security Council to react react to the crimes of terrorists who are using chemical weapons more and more frequently have not led to success due to the opposition of Western colleagues. It is quite typical that that we're completely indifferent to the recent actions of terrorists in Mosul, and that fact was confirmed by such reputable and impartial international organizations as the Red Cross. I have to draw your attention to the statement of the Secretary General of the UN. He called for a thorough inquiry into what really happened in Han Sheikhoun. We fully support this kind of position, and this investigation needs to be comprehensive and objective, and we should put an end to the very poor practice of long-distance investigations based on information that even the fact-finding mission uses, that often is taken from the internet or from neighboring countries. Information and reports and evidence that is questionable and is very difficult to prove. Any body the investigative body, including the fact-finding mission, must actually go and visit the site where the incident occurred, using a broad range of methodologies, including taking samples, including using medical and legal experts. The need for this kind of approach was mentioned in the 4th and 5th reports of the JIM. By the way, paragraph 49 and 11 of those reports specifically mention that. The team of investigators, once again I stress, needs to be truly international in character, in accordance with the principles of broad geographical representation. In its current form, the fact-finding mission does not correspond to this founding principle at all. The conclusions of this fact-finding mission cannot be called impartial. Another thing I wanted to say, once again, it's completely irresponsible and the statement, and completely irresponsible and lacking in respect. That is the statement by the United Kingdom, by the ambassador of the United Kingdom. It's explained by the fact that you're not doing anything about the situation. You're not. No, it's true. You are doing one thing. You are submitting drafts in the Security Council that only provoke. Also, another thing you do, you're putting unilateral pressure on the joint investigative mechanism without even hiding this, without trying to conceal this, and trying to pressure it to produce facts that you need. And Mr. Reichert, beyond the norms of diplomatic standards, your statements about China and Russia are unacceptable. This should not be repeated. We won't accept it. We won't hear it. We won't listen to it. You should answer for what Great Britain is doing in contributing to resolving this situation in Syria. Do you carry any kind of responsibility? Do you have a sense of responsibility? No, you don't. Everything is guided by the need to change regime change. Even this obsession with regime change is what hinders the work of the Security Council. You, in fact, are trying to have the Security Council give a cover of legitimacy to your illegitimate plans. And you should not try to introduce discord between us and the people of Syria or people of Iraq and other nations of the Middle East. I thought that the diplomatic service of the United Kingdom had long ago abandoned these kinds of tactics. So once again, I repeat that without truly uniting our efforts and through collective action, we will not resolve the problem of the Syrian conflict or the problem of terrorism. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to the representative of the Russian Federation. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United States.